Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. Today my special guest is Matt Cameron. I'm just such a huge fan. Talk about the difference between playing with Soundgarden and with Pearl Jam, and do you do anything different? Is your approach different?
Well, thank you for the compliments. Right back at you, my friend. Great channel. You know, I think the overall approach to like performing, recording, learning songs, songwriting is essentially the same, you know, with any kind of band I'm playing with or situation that I'm involved with. I think the difference with Soundgarden was that I kind of helped build it from the ground up, you know. I kind of helped forge the sound of the band and, you know, everything that it's kind of known for. When I joined Pearl Jam, it was 1998, and they were fully established.
Right.
Legends unto themselves. So I really tried to fit what they needed at that time. Just going straight out on tour, learning a set, you know, just kind of being prepared for the gig. And then eventually, like, you know, the creative side kicked in for me, like, you know, just bringing in music and things like that, which they were always just wide open to. But, you know, I think the overall approach is the same, you know, for the way that I would approach a gig or just approach, you know, a situation where I'm going to be playing shows or recording or things like that. Just show up prepared and try to, you know, just try my best and you know, trust my own instincts as well. But the overall approach is essentially the same. You know what I mean?
Is there anything that's difficult for you to play if you're
Right.
playing in 7 or playing in 5? Is that something that just came naturally to you, or these things that you, over time, you became really good at?
Well, I think there was an element of a natural ability that I kind of had at a young age. I could play the drums pretty young. It all sort of made sense to me somehow. And then eventually it was just by all the music that I was listening to, being exposed to as a teenager in my formative years, probably has something to do with how I eventually naturally became aware of, like, you know, just playing in odd time signatures or trying to set up a section of a song that's not in 4/4.
Right.
You know, I loved like Bill Bruford and you know, Billy Cobham, like just like some of the great, you know, fusion players in the early 70s, late 60s. That was a really huge influence on me. So I think it was just, you know, just listening early on, and then just like, you know, having these great opportunities to sort of venture into that side of my musical abilities and just the kind of music that I was naturally, you know, drawn towards and listening to and stuff like that.
What songs would you put your headphones on and play with when you were a teenager?
Good question.
Are there any records that you would play?
Yeah,
that
you know,
played to?
there was, like, I remember listening to Queen, Night at the Opera, playing along to that, Roger Taylor, one of my all-time faves. Some of the Steely Dan albums, like Asia, and Caves of Altamira, you know, the Royal Scam.
Totally.
So some of those records for me early on were sort of like drum academy level master classes of like how
Still are.
each guy sort of like had his own style.
Yeah.
But like they were playing these songs that were really technical. So I played along to some of that stuff for sure.
Would you play along to Steve Gadd's fills on Asia?
No, I wish I could have done that at that age. I certainly I listened to them a lot. I was like, how does he do that? How is he doing that? Like Peg, I would try to play along to that one. Just kind of the you know, like the ones that were just more groove oriented. So yeah, those records were pretty big influence on me. And then, you know, I was listening to a lot of.
Did you listen to Zeppelin and Rush and things like
so
that?
I listened to a lot of you know, like Hendrix growing up when I was a kid. So a lot of Mitch Mitchell, a lot of Cream, a lot of Ginger Baker. You know, Keith Moon, John Bonham, a lot of the British guys initially made a huge impact on me. You know, when I was 12, 13, around that time when I was able to start, you know, I could play drums, and I was sort of playing in neighborhood bands around that time.
Are you taking lessons at the time?
I started taking lessons when I was around 17, after I'd played in like some bands and, cover bands, bar bands, things like that. I decided to try to get a little more serious about it. So I took some lessons from a gentleman named John Santo from San Diego. He played in the San Diego Symphony, and he also played with the Harry Partch Ensemble. A American composer, artist from the early 20th century who made his own instruments.
Absolutely.
He wrote these incredible operas. So John exposed me to this really interesting, weird, avant side of music, Steve Reich, things like that. So I got exposed to that stuff when I was like, 17, 18. And I think that led me to appreciate, I started listening to, Coltrane and Miles, and just like that whole side of music really just opened up a whole new area of just, being able to focus in on, what makes a soloist great, or what makes a voice, how that certain voice can sort of carry an entire piece of music, with all of us in the background helping it,
Now, as soon as you sat down, you picked up your sticks and you played traditional grip just for a second. That's the first thing that you did.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I think I like to come down and just kind of hit him a little bit soft, and just like a little bit of a, I always like to do a little swing thing when I first sit down.
So you're a teenager, you're starting to play in bands, and when you're 15 or something like that?
14, 15, yeah.
Okay. And you're doing what kind of music?
Oh gosh, we were doing, Deep Purple, Kiss, Cream. Then when I was around 16, I got in a band in high school that was a really good musicians, and we were able to play FM by Steely Dan.
Okay.
And we played some Allman Brothers. So at that time, around 16, 17, I kind of, like the musicians I was playing with, they were a little bit better than the guys previously. So I kind of got that experience of like playing with better musicians, and how that can help the overall, sound of the group that you're with, or just the overall experience.
Did you start thinking in different ways, starting to play with a band, and you start to play original songs? Tell me about the development of that.
Yeah, so that happened sort of early on with this group I was just describing. I was able to, I think, bring in more just of an overall idea as a musician, like even though it's on the drums. I was able to sort of contribute in a way that was more meaningful to me at that time, and that's something that I felt like I just wanted to pursue. Just my own music, or like tapping it, or hooking up with guys that sort of have their own like idea of what they want to do.
So I want to ask you about the Temple of the Dog record. You guys did that where, at London Bridge?
We did that at London Bridge, yes. That was late 89, early 90, I think, is sort of that. It was a very short time frame.
A week that you did it in? Couple weeks?
It was probably like, I just remember like we got together like, 10 days or something, and then we recorded for maybe a week or something like that. So I think, after Andy passed away, that was the reason for the main impetus for us doing the album. Chris had written these songs and sent the demos to Stone and Jeff, and from there we just decided to get together, learn those songs, and more songs just sort of developed from those jams. But yeah, it was pretty quick. Just learning a whole bunch of music, or barely learning it, and then recording it. It was one of those,
What do you think about that?
kinds of
About
records.
actually not being rehearsed and just kind of going in? You just write the songs, or Chris wrote the songs or whatever, and you go in and you just play them.
Of course, it depends on the musicians,
Right.
right? For me personally, it's like if you can get the right group together that's able to sort of like rise to that occasion, then you can get performances that you couldn't get if you were rehearsing it for 2 weeks straight, you know. I mean, both approaches have their benefits, obviously. But for me, as a performer and an artist, sometimes it's really nice to hear that off the cuff performance that of a musician who's just learned it.
Do you ever go back and listen to any of these old records? Other than when I asked you to play some fills from some of these.
I went down the list that you sent Neil. I certainly did.
Is it weird to go back and listen to them?
You know, it's not really too weird for me.
Okay.
You know, it's bittersweet because of Chris, obviously.
Obviously, yeah.
You know, I always when I listened to some of that Temple the Dog record, today and last night, and it still sounds really crisp. It sounds really fresh.
Yeah.
You know, and it gives me that same sort of feeling as when I made it. Like, you know, I can fully get behind this. You know, it's like I listen to that music and it's like, yeah, this has so much of me in it and so much of us in it, and it's like, I'm behind this 1,000%. You know, and it still gives me that kind of vibe. You know.
What is your favorite song to play off that? What would be your favorite song? Like when I hear "Pushing Forward Back," that I love the groove on that song.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful vibe.
The one that gets me, I really like "Your Savior." That was one that just came together.
That's one I wanted to ask you about. Is all the fills in that?
Yeah, well, I listened to those fills and it's like, wow, who is that kid? Who's this young buck? That one came together pretty quickly, late in the session, if I remember it right.
Yeah.
But we did get to tour in 2016. It was a fantastic experience. And I just remember getting choked up playing, like Times of Trouble and just some of the slower Chris stuff where he really got to like stretch on a whole bunch of notes in, he would just, like, that voice would just fill up, like Madison Square Garden, like playing that song was just like, oh my God. Got kind of weepy.
With Chris being a drummer,
yeah,
would he ever say, "Hey, Matt, what about playing this?" Or did he ever have any input in the drums? He never said anything, right?
He said nothing.
That's actually what Kim told me.
He said
Matt that he
nothing.
said that Chris never said anything to you about drums,
which was so mind blowing. I think it was partly mutual respect. We both really loved what each of us brought to the table. But I think he just liked what I was doing. Like, he trusted my instincts as a fellow bandmate and musician and songwriter and everything. No, that never really happened. But then again, conversely, like some of his demos had him playing drums, or it had some drum programming that I followed to a T because they were fucking great parts.
Yeah.
For me, it's just all about like making sure the part fits the song to the best of its ability. And some of his stuff that he came up with, like, for instance, a song "Ugly Truth" on "Louder Than Love."
Yep.
Is a song he wrote top to bottom. He wrote everything, drum part, everything. That he did a demo on that tune that I loved immediately, and so that's an example of me playing what he came up with.
Okay, so when he would come with a demo like that, it was on a cassette. Would he play it for the whole band, or would he give you a cassette and say, "Hey, I came up with this song. What do you think?" Yeah,
he would normally like take this home and listen to this.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, okay, everyone sit down, listen to my demo kind of thing.
Yeah.
We were like jamming or learning 10 other things at the same time. So
you go home, you'd listen to this, and what would be the first thing you think when you hear that song?
This song rules. Like, this is going to sound so amazing in our band. It was just that feeling of elation of like, oh my God, I get to play a song this good. That it was always that kind of stuff with his demos. I mean, some of them, not all of them, flew with the band, but it was always a joy to hear what he would bring to the table, and Ben and Kim and everyone always had a really unique sense of songwriting, and it's cool when you get to play in bands like that, where everyone is able to contribute in their own unique ways, it doesn't always work in all settings, but you know, if you can find that right group, that right combination, then it's pretty. You're lucky, you know.
Yeah.
You're lucky, for sure.
Now, when we talked last year, I asked you about the drums on Bad Motorfinger, like
Yes.
on Jesus Christ Pose, for example.
Yeah.
And I said, what's up with the alternate takes? Because the drums, and this is not anything about, it's a pretty radically different drum sound, a great drum sound on the alternate takes. That the room sounds,
Yeah.
almost sounds like a different song. So I wanted to say to people here that they should definitely go out and check out the alternate takes on that record, because it's a very different vibe.
Yeah.
All the songs have a very different vibe.
Right.
I love the drum sounds.
I think that was at Avast. We were doing those recordings. Yeah, I'm not sure if that was ADAT or something like that, but that was a lot raw. I think, you know, way before we recorded the Bad Motorfinger version of that tune. But yes, the way that the Bad Motorfinger was mixed, I personally felt like the room sound got squashed quite a bit. And we just went for this real pointy, dry approach on all the instruments, you know, which I think it definitely works now. But at the time, I was like,
I think it works for me.
I'd put it on the shelf. It's like, okay, I'll come back to that at some point, and I did. And it sounds fine.
If you don't know that anything else exists, that there's another possibility, you don't ever think about it. It doesn't even occur to you.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that's the way that it's meant to be.
But as musicians, like, you know, when we're in that sort of like predicament where we do create this thing that we're really proud of, but it doesn't come out like as expected, like the end result, or you think the end result could be much better if it just did this one other thing, you know. But that's all part of, like, you know, compromise, playing in a band, that, you know, like, you know, the greater good is the most important thing.
Okay, so
but as the artist, you're just like, oh shit, it could have done this. You know what I mean?
If I were to ask you, of all the Soundgarden records, which one do you feel the songs and the sonics really were kind of what you guys imagined, or what you imagined, your own personal, not speaking for anyone else?
That was Super Unknown.
Yes.
For sure. That was Super Unknown. Yeah. Because for me, the way that it got mixed by Brendan, the drums just came up in the mix. They just got louder.
Huge.
And I loved it immediately. And the guys, you know, I think Soundgarden, we just came from this different aesthetic, you know. The SST records had a certain sound. The Sub Pop records had a certain sound, and a lot of times it just had to do with like the way drums were mixed or approached or recorded back in the '80s. You know, just kind of that early DIY sort of recording methods that we were just sort of dealing with back then. But when that record got mixed, I felt like personally that the drums were a lot more hi-fi. Like the spectrum came out. My snare drums had a nice sort of place in all the songs, and I was able to really kind of zero in on what kind of sound I wanted for each song. So, you know, we got really anal with that record. I think it was definitely that one for me.
There's so many signature fills. There's so many signature sounds. The snare sound, like on Black Hole Sun, for example.
Right.
I mean, it really holds up to, 30 years later.
Yeah.
The thing is so hi-fi sounding. The whole record is like that.
Yeah.
What snare drums were you playing during that time period? Keplinger snares, right?
For that particular song, I was playing a Keplinger snare, which I think it's one
Is
of
it over
these,
here, maybe?
It is
or
not
something?
one of those ones. Do you
Okay.
want, I think I see it. Do you want me to grab it?
Yeah.
I use the Keplingers.
That thing looks like it weighs a ton, does it?
It does weigh a ton.
I mean, it really looks. That's a 7, isn't it?
7, yeah.
Yeah.
But this is my Black Hole Sun snare. Mailman. Like I use this a lot on Super Unknown, and I didn't really use it on tour. It didn't really.
Is it because it's a 7 that it's hard? That you feel when you're playing it, it's more difficult to hear
Yeah, you know, I
hear
think
the snares.
it was more inconsistent live, like, you know, through the PA and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, it worked great through a microphone, but sometimes. So it's got that kind of long note thing.
Sounds killer. I love 7-inch deep snares. They sound so fat. It's got the great bottom end.
It's tuned a little low. I mean, it would have been tuned up. The bottom would have been tuned up, but that's just off the shelf there. But yeah, that's the Black Hole Sun snare drum right there.
I want to ask you this. I talked to your drum tech, Neil,
Yes.
about this, but use Emperors. Do you use clear Emperors?
I use clear amps on the toms.
Yep.
Clear ambassadors on the bottom.
Yep.
Coated amp on the top snare.
Yep.
And then I use the Ambassador TD marching snare drum snare side head, which has a lot thinner bevel on the where it hits on the rim, so you can crank it up super high.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I've got the Power Stroke, clear Power Stroke on the kick. Zildjian cymbals since day one.
Yeah, forever.
I've loved them since I was a teen. Vic First sticks. Yeah, and Yamaha. You know, Yamaha pedals, shells, hardware.
Let's talk about drum
best.
tuning, because your
Yes.
drums were always tuned really well. And when I think about Super
Not
Unknown,
always, but
okay, on Super Unknown, the drums
Thank
sound
you.
phenomenal. The drum
Yeah.
tuning, the toms are massive sounding.
Yeah.
Drum tuning is really an art. How do you learn about drum tuning, and what is tell me about your taste in drums? Where should drums
gosh.
be tuned? Do you tune
Yeah,
the two
man.
heads the same pitch?
Yeah.
How do you do it?
Boy, good question. This could be a whole YouTube channel episode on just this. This
well,
one.
go
this one
for
thing.
it.
I'll start it, and other guys can contribute. But for me, man, it's just a taste thing. It's like what I loved growing up hearing records. Like I love Mick Fleetwood's drum sound. I love Steve Gadd's drum sound.
Yes.
You know? I love Lenny White's drum sound. You know, Tony Williams, like the open. Like that kind of era where the jazz guys were kind of like doing a rock tuning, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's sort of the tuning that I fucking loved.
Yeah.
Billy Cobham, Jack DeJohnette. And then from there, it's like, you know, Stuart Copeland had a really interesting approach to drum tuning that, like, you know, where everything was just super high. It was more of a jazz tuning.
Yep.
But played, you know, really, really hard. So for me, it's just like all the drummers that I loved trying to emulate kind of their sound. And I think, you know, Mick Fleetwood has always been kind of a big guiding light as far as tom-toms goes, you know, like, because I tend to get a lower sort of California, you know, sound on my tom-toms, like, you know, kind of Don Henley or Russ Kunkel, that kind of,
Yeah.
you know, that
Yeah, yeah.
kind of sound. I've always been drawn to that era of drum sound, just kind of that 70s drum sound. One reason I did get my Keplinger snare in 1987 was because I just joined Soundgarden, and
You needed something to
Soundgarden
project,
was a very
right?
fucking loud band.
Yeah.
And that definitely got me over the edge, you know, as far as you know, rehearsals or playing in bars and stuff like that. So, but yeah, but the tuning for me has just been evolving. It's still evolving as well, because like this kit with the wood hoops, it requires a little bit different tuning than, like, you know, your standard die cast.
Because why? Tell me about that.
Because these kind of soak up a little bit more of the overall kind of low end. It's like they provide a lot more mid range and attack, but like the low end gets a little cloudy with these things, so you have to kind of tune them a little bit lower, and it just, I don't know, it's just it's a combination of the drum and what kind of heads and everything. Sometimes, like, if your drums are tuned really high in a hard rock setting like that, that can really add more punch to how the drums are sounding live. So I think for me, it's like I've always relied on, you know, having a good sound man and having my drums maybe down, you know, down a pitch or two. I'm just trying to add to sort of like the mid-range and the low end of the band, especially with Soundgarden. Like the kick and snare tone, I think, helped out with the overall sound of the band. Like that gave a certain tonality to the records, and I was always, like, you know, aware of that or conscious of that to try to add some extra notes in there.
Do you think about the type fills you're going to play? Because there's so many signature fills that you have in so many of your big songs. Are there places where you'll say, okay, this is my spot, this needs a big fill here? How do you think about this?
Well, you know what? I normally don't think too much about it once I'm there, you know. I think,
are you improvising in the studio typically?
I mean, I'm normally improvising. I think I'm the type of musician that just likes to be ready in the moment, like to like have everything learned, like you know, like I want to know where my spots are, like, you know, if that opportunity does happen. But yeah, man, I don't always kind of like think about it before I'm doing it, you know, or like there's been a couple occasions where I've tried to work out some parts and things like that. But I think for me, it always kind of works best when I'm sort of in the moment and we're all kind of doing a take together that everyone's getting off on, you know.
What is one of your favorite grooves to play? Let's take Soundgarden first.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, like, you know, the most well-known one is Outshined.
Yep.
So it's like, for me, it's like, you know, it's like, okay, that's definitely not 4/4, but I'm gonna try to play it like I'm 4/4. I'll try to have that, give it that sort of feel, but then I have to do that little hiccup note.
That's right.
And I sort of wait. My whole thing is I just try to wait to the very last moment before I play that turnaround note, or just kind of give it more of a... Like there's different ways that you can sort of...
How are you counting that? Tell me about that.
Oh,
are you, you know, chord notes pretty much. that seems like a very natural state for you to be in to play.
Kind of, yeah.
7.
Yeah.
That's you know, like just playing 4/4 for you,
Yeah.
right?
Well, for me, you know, that kind of odd times signature groove. It just has to have that. You know, just to kind of give it that pulse. But like, you know, that turnaround note at the end can be kind of whatever it is, you know. It's
Sure.
like, that's one kind of song that I really try to like keep, you know, I tried to keep my part really constant, and I think we were all trying to write like a really good sort of well-crafted song, you know. But on the pre-chorus, there was actually one thing that didn't come through on the recording, where it's like, you know, where nah, you know. So on the recording, I was doing this. That's just a little. You can get into the headphones and
On the headphones you can hear it.
You can hear that, but it didn't come through on the recording. So there's a little insider knowledge for you there.
Okay, so
Rick.
are there any other things like that? What are some things that you hear that you say, God, I wish that this came out more?
Well, on Bad Motorfinger, like there was a lot of cymbal work that I felt just got a little bit, you know, just it
could have been a little bit.
Could have been a little more cymbal work overall.
Yeah.
Like there was this song Holy Water where I thought I did some nice stuff on that one, but you know.
What are you gonna do?
Hey,
right?
what are you gonna do? I know it's in there. If you put on the headphones, it's like, okay, there it is. But it's just one of those you know, things like we were talking about earlier. Just as a musician, you want to sort of be able to put your stamp on it as much as possible. I guess part of that is like, you know, ego to a certain degree, but for me, it's, you know, I think like I've always tried to make the overall thing better.
Did you guys play with clicks ever?
Normally, no.
Okay.
We did on my recommendation for 2 songs on Bad Motor Finger, and then we did, and then for most of King Animal, that was mostly click tracks.
And
it was pretty much
tell me about your relationship with click tracks.
Well, you know, after, well, I had grown up playing to a metronome, so I had no sort of like hang-ups with, you know, playing to a click track as a drummer. Playing sessions, it's bread and butter of what, you know, what we have to do.
Yeah.
We have to know how to do that without no complaining. Like, you know, you can't like make any complaints about that. So you just have to figure out a way to make it musical, which I kind of figured out early on. But with Soundgarden, there was a couple songs that I felt I just wanted to get that sort of machine kind of lock happening, and I wanted to make sure that my part was in that realm. We did that with kind of the first half of Rusty Cage and for Room 1,000 Years Wide.
When you say the first half, did you turn the click off
Yeah.
after the first half? Once you kind of established the groove, right?
Yeah. And then once until we get to the outro.
Okay.
Where it has the tempo change.
Yeah.
So and then that was pretty much it. You know, we were just sort of playing along with each other. I would check my tempos after a take. I would listen to a metronome and make sure I was sort of in the ballpark, and so.
You would know what the tempo was though before going in,
Yeah,
right?
we'd listen to the producer or the engineer would play us. Okay, here's 114. Here's whatever, and so yeah, we'd start the take that way.
Do you tune your snare between every take?
I try to tighten it up.
Yeah.
It might not be a retuning. It's probably just
to make sure the rim shots, wherever
like,
you're doing your rim shots,
like
those
these,
lugs.
These 3 or 4 back here are the ones that you need to look at after each take or 2.
Do you ever use a reference snare hit when you start a song, just so you kind of have the idea of where the snare pitch is?
You mean a recording?
Yeah, just like so you'll hit the snare once, so you'll know what the pitch is when you start it, so that you don't end up kind of over tuning it if you're doing other takes.
Yeah, there's a couple Fleetwood Mac songs that like I would always listen to, or a Bad Company. You know, Simon Kirke, some of his that kind of crack. I want to make sure that it's in kind of that higher register.
And are you thinking about the pitch of the song too when you're hearing these things, or do you want it kind of to be, you want it to have a tone but nothing that is actually distracting from the music, right?
Pitch wise, probably not as much as just the overall like timbre of it, like a wood snare versus a metal snare. I think that's kind of what I've always tried to I try to fit that hole. But then again, like, you know, so like this snare drum on Black Hole Sun, like most producers would just say, "Oh, God, dude, tape that up. It's too much, too much." But we were so headstrong.
That makes the song.
But we were so headstrong back then. It's like, you know, I definitely had some conversations like that with Michael Beinhorn. But you know, I think we were able to kind of get a good instrument sound. I was really into like getting my instrument sounding like good together, like all the elements fitting. And that was definitely a part of it. But, you know, if we were like session musicians going in and playing a jingle, this would be out the window.
Right.
Yeah.
When you guys were recording it, I had heard, I don't know if this is true, that you did the drums on a 2-inch 8-track. Is there anything, or was that on a 24-track?
No, all 24.
Okay.
Yeah. But we had another 24 kind of slaved up for vocals and guitar.
Do you think that you need to have space in a song? Like Zeppelin records can have really loud open drum sounds because the guitar sounds are really not as distorted as you think they are. They're hardly distorted at all.
That's right.
And when I listen to Fell on Black Days, for example, the guitars are beautiful on that, but they're not as distorted as you think. If they were overdriven more, it would be eating up a lot of the drum sound.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how do you decide then if you're going to play a metal snare, a wood snare? How do you think about that?
Well, for that particular song, I chose to play a Brady snare drum, which is a wood snare.
Love Brady snares.
Yeah, Brady snare. For that one, I wanted to try to have it just be a little more laid back, kind of, you know, maybe like, you know, not croonery, but just like more ballady, like, you know, like how we would approach a ballad, which is how that song came out.
Now that has that snare right after the first chorus, boom, boom, right into the
Yeah.
second verse, right? Now that's something that that's what you just happened to play right there?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Would it be different on different takes, or would you just leave out a fill sometimes?
No,
or?
I mean that was my spot for like, you know, just like a, you know, just a
Count
wind
the
up.
band back in.
Yeah, just a total like on 4.
Yeah.
It would normally just be like 1, 2. Yeah.
I love those kind of simple fills like that. I
Yeah.
call it a non-fill fill.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Al Jackson Jr., you know, like one of my all-time heroes, Howard Grimes, you know, those guys. It's just all about the pocket, and then like, you know, if they put in like a little accent, like it's golden, you know. So I always try to pick my spots, and for that particular song, like that was a spot to like, you know, hit 4. So
When you did Down on the Upside,
Yeah.
where did you guys do? Did you do that? Who recorded that?
we recorded that with Adam Casper,
Right.
at Litho,
Okay.
Studio Litho, where you were
Where
yesterday.
Wow, I did
Yeah.
not know that.
Yeah, the start of that record was, I think Chris had a whole bunch of demos that no one had heard yet, so he and I went in there for about 3 or 4 days at the beginning of the sessions in '96, I believe, early '96. After about a week of that, everyone came in and we just sort of like learned some of these new songs that Chris had written. But that was the first time that the band hadn't ever really like rehearsed before we went into the studio, so it had sort of that unfinished kind of quality. But what we were talking about earlier of like, you know, having a piece of music that you just have learned and then you put it to tape, that can sometimes be really exciting. And that's what that record was for me, for sure.
When you joined Pearl Jam, first gig you're basically playing in a cover band then, right? As the drummer. You have to
Yeah.
listen to the songs.
I learned 60 songs.
What's that like to learn 60 songs? Now, a lot of the songs you were familiar with.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Sure.
But what was that like? Was it,
Man, it was intense.
that's so difficult,
It
right?
was intense, yeah. You know, it's like after I got off the phone with Eddie and I agreed to do this upcoming tour, I was just
Yeah.
like, I hung up the phone, I was just like, oh my God, what have I just agreed to? Just one of those moments of like, okay, I got to get to work. You know, not much of it was out of my wheelhouse
Right.
as far as how I approach like playing in rock bands, and I've known those guys forever. So it was actually a pretty easy transition, you know,
Yeah.
like, you know, personally and professionally and everything. But, you know, I think I was still really, the dust hadn't settled for me with
Yeah.
losing Soundgarden. And I think I've just been the kind of musician that I just go full throttle, like I'm always moving forward, you know? And I think that's how I'll always be. The transition was tricky just for me, just because of, you know,
Yeah.
it's like going through a divorce or something like that.
You've been in
But it's
Pearl
been
Jam
great.
for so long now.
I know.
Is
it's,
that
it's
strange?
incredible. It's incredible. Yeah, it's just like, you know, yeah, it is strange because like, you know,
Like
my
half
son's
your
20.
life,
Yeah.
you've been in Pearl Jam.
Totally. But, you know, at the same time, it just feels like the pace in which I've always worked, you know, I don't always like sit down and kind of ponder like, what have I done? You know, I think I'm always kind of full throttle. So when I do sit back and think about it, it's incredible. Just like, oh my God, I've done so much great stuff. I'm so proud of it, you know.
When you did your Soundgarden reunion, and you're getting ready to do that, and you hadn't played the songs in years and years,
Yeah.
it's basically like the same thing, right? You go back to the records and you're like, wait,
Yeah.
how does this go again?
Who's this guy? Pretty much, man.
Were there any grooves that were kind of weird to play at all, or not really?
Some of the stuff from like Louder Than Love, like some of the '80s era stuff, I definitely had to kind of listen because I was playing differently back then than the way I ended up in the '90s. You know?
I was going to ask you about that. Tell me about that.
Well, you know, I think I just hadn't done as much touring in the '80s. I started touring in '87 with Soundgarden, and I think like just playing in bars, clubs, you know, just rehearsing, and you know, wherever we could. Like it's just and writing songs, getting all these songs together. It was just kind of a different approach. You know, it's just more like singular, like you're hearing your part like in a room. Like, oh, there's there's Kim's part, there's Hero's part, you know. And then once you start touring, it's just like all, you know, the hearing aspect of playing in a band just gets sort of distorted, or like that just gets obliterated. So you overcompensate and play louder and stuff like that. So yeah, so I sometimes do miss that sort of like, you know, just sort of the quieter version of what we do.
Is there a song in your set with Pearl Jam that is where it's coming up and you're thinking, feeling like
Low energy?
well, just that, yeah. That
Well, yeah, sure.
you're not 25 anymore.
That's right. Well, you know, there have been occasions, like in the past couple tours, where, you know, like I feel like I'm going past that point of exhaustion. It's like, okay, I'm tired, but hey, I have 6 more songs to do. So you just gotta dig deep and take a sip of Gatorade, and you know, hope for the best.
Okay, I want to talk about repetitive injuries or anything, if you've
Yeah.
ever had anything like that.
You know, I've had like a tendonitis in my elbow,
Okay.
some forearm tendonitis, but like any sort of like just immediate joint stuff, I've been pretty lucky. I think I've been on a constant sort of like adjustment journey, like as a musician, as a drummer, just throughout the years. I think I'm constantly trying to like relax, adjust my grip, get better posture, breathe
You always
more.
had great posture. Watching any of the old videos, watching you now, you really sit up.
It's Papa Joe Jones, right?
That's right.
Just look at some of his videos, kids.
Yeah.
Papa Joe Jones. It's just it's a lot easier, you know, when you got everything kind of lined up. It's not as easy now that I'm almost 60, because this kind of music requires like a certain kind of energy, you know, and that energy a lot of times is purely athletic, you know. So you know, us rock drummers out there in the world, it's like we got to bring this sort of athleticism to our gig, and be mindful of of the music that we're playing as well. You know, that's a big part of it. So you have to stay. You just got to stay on top of it. Wooden Jesus was my take on 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Like,
Okay.
Okay, so that was just sort of. That was sort of my take on a Steve Gadd.
I would never have guessed that, but
Yeah.
hearing them back to back, I'm like,
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. It was my homage to the master.
How long does it take for you to come up with a groove like that?
Well, you know, the song was like the original song was just like a 6/8. I was just like. I mean, parts of the song do go to that sort of like constant groove, and a lot of Chris's songs in 6/8 and 3/4 just did have that related. Just that kind of driving, downbeat kind of feel, and I wanted to give it a little bit more of a lift with that beat.
Let's talk about burying the kick drum or lifting off the head.
Yeah.
What's your philosophy on that?
Well, I think I'm a high volume kick player, so I naturally dig the beater in.
Yeah.
It is less dynamic, obviously, but I think
More punch.
that comes from just playing gigs, playing live.
Yeah, I noticed though that when you do a gong, there's always the dynamics in those, which really gives it the groove, and that's really important, right?
Well, I try to make sure that the dynamics are sort of the right hand, right foot. I like to try to add a lot of sort of grace notes in between notes, just. Stuff like that,
Is there anything that the young Matt Cameron could play that you can play now, or
Yeah.
the reverse? Are there things that you can play now that you couldn't play when you were younger?
Well, I think I have a little bit better taste now. I think I'm trying to play less. You know, I'm trying to let the music do all the talking as opposed to, you know, a drum part or something like that. I think I had more effortless speed and power, like when I was in my mid-20s. You know, like there was a sort of a strength thing that was happening back then that, you know, I didn't have to think about.
So what you make up for now is the taste.
Yeah,
right.
Like the playing less, the just like trying to relax more, like making every note be consistent. The intent of each note, like how, just like what your intention is when you are playing. I think that's been a really important one for me, as opposed to just going balls out and, you know, trying to get through a gig, or just trying to, like, you know, get through the day or something. Like, you know, making sure that, like, you mean everything you play, you know, or just making sure that there's as much meaning as you can give it, depending on whatever situation you're in.
Do you ever find that your last floor, Tom, some gigs you could put your coffee on it? That you don't feel like, I don't want to get around to that, and you just play like some 5-piece kit.
But if it's there, and you're feeling like, oh yeah, my back's feeling good tonight,
right?
I'm gonna smash that thing a couple times.
I think that's. I mean, does that change at all? Though it does from gig to gig, right? Sometimes you'll play it more than other gigs.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. I try to play it. I mean, I try to get around the whole kit, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it just feels really fucking good.
And what is it? Are you 12, 13?
Yeah, I've always been
13, 14,
12,
16?
12, 13, 16, 18.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is a 14 by 24. Yeah, this is the Yamaha Oak Custom with the maple wood hoops that they made for me in 2008, I believe it was.
Okay, so
Incredible
I have a
drums.
theory, Matt, that
Yes.
I've always felt that 14-inch depth kick drums always sound the best,
Yeah.
no matter how big they are.
Right.
And do you have a theory on that?
Well, that was the old Ludwig size,
Yeah.
In their rock kits that they used to make in the 60s and 70s. And for me, just having, like, I mean, I have muffling inside the drum, but for the traditional, like, wide open felt strip style tuning that Bonham did,
Yeah.
and, you know, Louis Bellson, you know, the kind of Buddy Rich sound where it is a little bit tighter and
Yeah.
and there's more of a bounce. That's where the 14 completely rules.
Yeah.
Like, you know, with mine, I still kind of have a traditional rock sound, but it's a quicker note, you know. I mean,
Because the air goes through it quicker.
Yeah, so it's a lot quicker punch. It's a lot louder on stage, and I just like the way it looks and the way it records.
The muffling of your kick drum.
Yes.
Is it touching both heads?
I have one of these pillows that touches both sides. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think for me, like, just playing gigs, the sound man and I are a little more comfortable with this sort of setup that's, like, really quick, efficient, works great every time.
Yep.
If I'm in the studio, I will definitely, experiment with more kind of wide open tunings and the felt strip kind of philosophy that we were talking about earlier.
Are there any Soundgarden songs that you use double-headed kick drums?
Ooh.
There has to be one.
Ooh. Good question. I think I always had a hole in the front of every SG recording.
Okay.
But let me get back to you on that. Oh, you know, there was some B-side stuff. No. Okay. Yeah. No, on the main recordings. No. Some of the B-side stuff. Yes.
Did you ever have the front head completely off for anything?
Oh, on Louder Than Love, Terry Date liked he wanted me to take off the front kick drum head, and I did. And then he proceeded to put a cinder block into my Remo drum set for that recording. I was, you're putting a what and where? But hey, came out good. He was going for a really kind of punchy, just like all attack kind of kick drum sound. That didn't. I think it didn't always fit the timbre of that record. Mm-hmm. But that was another situation where, you know, I was sort of that was my first major label, our first major label recording. So But that was sort of an extreme example of like there being no tone and just pure muffle. So you know, I also think it's up to the individual player too. Like, you know, what feels comfortable. I mean, for me, it's always really important to make sure my foot is sort of leading the pack, you know, and I kind of do that just by sort of digging in and informing where everything else goes, you know.
How do you want to be remembered as a drummer, or do you want to be remembered through the records you played on, or does it even matter to you?
Well, I mean, I feel really fortunate to have been a part of so many really cool records, a great music scene. You know, I feel really lucky to just to still be doing it, you know. I don't know. I guess like as a musician, you know, I think like I've always tried to, you know, be a complete musician as well as a drummer. So maybe that would be one thing I'm trying to, not consciously like I'm going to do this kind of thing, but it's just sort of happened that way. So maybe that, I don't know.
Matt, I really appreciate you spending time with me today.
Thank you, Rick.
It's a real honor to sit here with you and talk and hear you
man.
play, especially. Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a wrap.
Nice, dude.
Oh, that was incredible.
Well, thank you. I hope it wasn't
it was perfect
too
amount of playing and
long-winded.
everything. Oh no, that was phenomenal.
Yeah, I think I flubbed up on a couple of the playing things there. So if you
I'll
could,
fix
You want
it.
to get another intro just so we have it as a safety?
No, I'm good.
Okay, I thought it was.
We're good. Yeah. I asked Kim yesterday. I forgot to ask him in the interview. I said, Kim, you got to explain something to me. He's like, what? Why do you wah-wah with your left foot when you're right-handed? And he goes, because I'm left-footed. And I said, no way.
No, he's not.
That's what he said. Is that not true? He said, I'm left-footed. I said, what do you mean, like you kick with your left foot? He said, yeah.
Whew, one of the many idiosyncrasies of my dear Kim Thai.
That is so.
It's so him.
It's actually it's so him, and
so him.
and it's so strange to see. I think he thought it was funny that I noticed that he wah-wah'd with his left foot. I just don't know anyone that wah-wahs with their left foot, and he's so known for his wah-wah playing.
Yeah.
And you have to
yeah.
put the wah-wah on the other side because it's normally the first thing in the chain, and
Dude.
it's got to be a nightmare for your tech.
Did you know this, Neil? Yeah, left-footed wah-wah.
Oh, I knew it, for sure.
Yeah, Josh knew it for sure.
Forward.
That's crazy. I mean,
Absolutely.
That really freaked me out when every time I've seen him play. it kind of unnerves me.
yeah, you know, he loves that weird guitar.
Yeah.
He does things his own fucking way, man.
He does.
You know, and that's what I love about him. It's infuriating at times
Yeah.
being in a band with him, but that's just who he is, man.
So his concept is so unique, and then after meeting him in person, it explains everything.
First pedal board,
I love it.
the first pedal board, it was in the middle of the board.
Okay.
Because we didn't know.
I did a little clip with him, just holding the phone,
That's
and I
crazy.
asked him because I forgot. And,
Yeah.
And then he's like, I didn't know if he made that up or not. He's probably not left-footed, right?
You know what? I've seen him kick a ball with the right foot. It's like, come on, dude. Is there such a thing as being right-handed and left-footed?
There is actually.
Okay.
There is. There
Okay.
is.
'Cause he's definitely right-handed.
He's definitely right-handed. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's.
He just wants to be different.
Is it the same thing as being goofy foot like on a skateboard?
Yeah. Okay.
he's-
Like I'm goofy foot.
He
Yeah.
talked about that. I think he
that is
mentioned
me.
skateboarding was
Yeah. I'm
really
goofy
weird.
foot and right-handed. So,
Yeah.
but
So
anyways.
you think he may have made that up, right?
No, knowing him, he's probably thought about that for his entire life.
I always think about these kind of things. I always find these
But
funny
I never
things.
really noticed that, man. I always thought it was like like a right-handed guitar player would always.
Would do it with your
Okay.
right. It's just you figure it's kind of natural to do that. Then
I don't
he's
think-
he's doing this.
I don't
It's
think
like,
he
what?
used to always
Wait,
do
what?
it left-footed. I think there used to be a right foot scenario.
We're gonna have to
back
check
in
the
day.
tapes.
Check the tapes, dude. Well, he only used to play with he played with the chorus pedal on. Like,
That's what he said.
all
All
the
the
time.
time.
Like pre wah-wah. And it was crazy. He played through a bass speaker. Yeah, Hero made these like bass speakers for everyone. Hey, Josh.
I don't even
So
know if he
his
said this in
sound-
the interview because he was talking about it at dinner the other night.
Yeah.
About the chorus.
100% of the time, it was on.
I
And
mean,
eventually,
he's-
like I think once Chris started playing, or he just stopped, or I forget what it was.
Why do you play wah wah with your left foot?
I'm left-footed, and I'm right-handed.
Oh my! You
That-
kick with your left foot.
Yep, and that caused problems with skateboarding and big wheels when I was a kid. It caused problems in the playground because people thought you're having trouble kicking the ball because you're using the wrong foot. What hand are
Oh
you?
my
Right-handed.
God.
You should kick with your right foot. It was even more of a disaster. It's like I couldn't coordinate running up to the ball and kicking it. I go, wait a minute. The buddy of mine just like rolled the ball to me. Just go ahead and kick it. I'm like 6 or 7. I kicked with my left foot, and it's like,
There we go.
there you go.